They laughed when my sister called me a costume soldier. The sound bounced off the walls and hit me harder than any battlefield injury. Forks clinked against plates, wine glasses tilted, and every smirk in that room carved into me like a knife. The shame pressed heavy on my chest. My name is Major Maria Barrett, and that night I realized the cruelest wars are not fought on foreign soil, but at the table where your own blood sits and mocks you. It was supposed to be a family gathering, a warm evening of food, laughter, and connection. Instead, it turned into a stage where my sister played the star, and I was her favorite punchline. She sat at the center of the table, glowing in everyone's attention, her words dripping with sarcasm every time she looked my way. "Maria thinks wearing a uniform makes her special," she said, pausing long enough for the room to burst into laughter. "But it's really just dress up, isn't it?" The laughter didn't stop. It spread like fire. My uncle slapped the table. My cousins exchanged smirks. Even my father chuckled under his breath. I sat frozen, my fork hovering in midair, my appetite gone. My mother, who should have defended me, simply sighed and looked away. And my sister, oh, she thrived in it. She tilted her head, her voice loud enough to carry across the table. "I mean, come on, real success is here, sitting right in front of you. I work in corporate. I make money, I'm respected. Maria, she just plays soldier." Plays soldier. Those two words seared into me. They didn't know the sleepless nights, the torn muscles, the missions where I had watched life slip away before dawn. They didn't know the weight of decisions that meant survival or loss. And yet here, in the place that should have been my safe haven, I was reduced to a joke. Every laugh felt like betrayal. Every dismissive glance reminded me I was invisible. I wore my uniform not out of vanity, but because it represented every sacrifice I had made. To them, it was a costume. To me, it was blood, sweat, and a life most of them could never endure. My sister leaned closer, her eyes sharp with cruelty. "Don't take it personally, Maria. We all know you're trying. Some people just aren't meant to achieve much. But hey, at least you look cute in your little outfit." The table erupted again, and in that moment I wasn't their sister, daughter, niece. I was their failure, their convenient target. I sat still, my hands trembling under the table where no one could see. My chest ached, but my face gave nothing away. Years in the military had taught me how to mask pain, yet inside, I was crumbling. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, to shout the truth of who I was, but I stayed silent, not because I was weak, but because sometimes silence is stronger than words. When the laughter faded, I finally lifted my chin. My voice was calm, steady, cutting through the smugness. "My name is Major Maria Barrett," I said, my words sharp as steel, "and I am not the failure here." The table fell silent. The air shifted, and for the first time that night, they looked at me, not as a joke, not as a shadow of my sister, but as someone they had never truly seen before. Discipline was not something handed to me. It was forged in long nights when my body ached and my mind begged me to quit. I still remember the military academy, the freezing mornings when we stood in formation, our breaths visible in the air, waiting for orders. The weight of my gear cut into my shoulders, and the drills seemed endless. My hands blistered, my muscles burned, but I pushed through. Every step, every order, every sacrifice carved me into who I am today. My name carries the title Major Maria Barrett because I bled for it. I learned early that strength wasn't about being the loudest voice or the one who demanded attention at the dinner table. It was about enduring when no one was watching. It was about carrying soldiers out of fire when my legs were shaking, about making choices that decided who would live to see morning. On the battlefield, respect was earned, not granted. Men twice my size looked to me for direction. Soldiers who had seen horrors beyond words trusted me with their lives. Out there, my rank mattered. Out there, my voice carried weight. At home, though, none of it existed. Not once did my parents come to a graduation or a ceremony. Not once did they ask about the medals pinned to my chest. They never wanted to hear about the missions or the leadership roles I had taken. They never asked how many nights I lay awake, carrying the memories of those I couldn't save. To them, my career was invisible, like I was invisible. The betrayal of being unseen by strangers is one thing, but the betrayal of being unseen by family, that cuts deeper than any wound I've carried. How do you explain to people who should have loved you unconditionally that your worth does not vanish just because they don't applaud it? I tried once. I told my father about the time I led a convoy through hostile territory where one wrong move could have cost lives. He nodded absent-mindedly, then turned the conversation back to my sister's latest job promotion. I could have died, and it would not have mattered at that table. But silence became my armor. They thought I was weak because I didn't fight for their approval. What they didn't understand was that I had already fought greater battles. I had stood in storms that would have broken them in seconds. My silence wasn't surrender, it was restraint. I endured loss, too. Friends who never made it home. Brothers and sisters in arms whose names are etched into stone. I stood at funerals in uniform, saluting caskets draped in flags, feeling the weight of honor and grief at once. I carried their memories with me into every mission, every decision. That kind of strength cannot be faked. So when my family mocked me, when they dismissed me as nothing, I let their words slide over me like dull blades. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know what I had survived. I wasn't just their quiet, unsuccessful sister. I was Major Maria Barrett, and no amount of their laughter could take that away. My sister's voice cut through the room like a blade, sharp and smug. She leaned back in her chair, swirling her glass with that rehearsed confidence she always carried. "Maria thinks she's so important," she said, her lips curling into a smile that wasn't a smile at all. "But let's be honest, it's all imaginary. She wears a costume and plays soldier, but at the end of the day, what does she really have?" The laughter came fast. My uncle chuckled the loudest, slapping the table as if she had just delivered the best joke of the night. My cousins whispered and smirked, trading glances like children sharing a secret. Even my parents didn't step in. They just sat there, letting the words hang, letting the sting settle deeper into me. It wasn't the first time she had humiliated me like this, but surrounded by relatives and neighbors, it cut deeper. The room felt hot, the air suffocating, and for a moment, I wanted to disappear. I stared down at my plate, silent, fighting back the urge to defend myself. I knew it wouldn't matter. No explanation, no story of sacrifice, no list of medals would ever change their minds. To them, my achievements were invisible. My sister was the golden one, the performer, the star. I was the shadow they mocked to make her shine brighter. Then it happened. A low rumble shook the windows, faint at first, but quickly rising until the entire house seemed to tremble. Conversation stopped. Laughter died mid-breath. People turned their heads, confusion flickering across their faces. Then came the unmistakable thumping sound, rotors slicing through the air. A helicopter. Chairs scraped against the floor as everyone rushed outside, curiosity pulling them like a tide. I followed slowly, my heart pounding, though I didn't know why. The night sky split open as the aircraft descended, powerful and deliberate. The wind whipped against us, lifting napkins, rattling branches, pulling hair into faces. My relatives shielded their eyes, staring with awe as the massive machine settled onto the ground. The door opened. A pilot stepped out, his boots hitting the earth with solid authority. His visor reflected the lights from the house, but when he removed his helmet, his eyes scanned the crowd. He didn't hesitate. He didn't look lost. His gaze locked on me almost instantly. The laughter from moments ago was gone, replaced by a silence so heavy it felt like the world had paused. The pilot strode forward, steady and confident, cutting through the crowd of my stunned relatives. When he reached me, he stopped, his posture crisp and formal. Then, with precision and respect, he raised his hand to his forehead. A perfect salute. "Major Barrett," he said firmly. "Ma'am." The sound of his voice echoed louder than any insult ever thrown at me. My family's jaws hung open, eyes wide, disbelief etched across every face. My sister's smirk crumbled, her glass lowering in slow motion as if her grip had failed her. And in that instant, the world shifted. The very people who mocked me had to watch as someone who served under the same flag I did treated me with honor they had never given. Their laughter froze in their throats, leaving behind only silence and shame. The silence after the salute was so sharp it could have cut glass. No one laughed now. No one dared to speak. The only sound was the wind still humming from the helicopter's blades as they slowed in the background. I returned the salute with steady hands, my movements calm, measured. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need to say a word. Respect spoke louder than anything I could have thrown back at them. The pilot's eyes stayed fixed on me, steady with recognition, steady with respect. Then, in a voice that carried over the stunned crowd, he said words that no one there would ever forget. "Ma'am, I wanted to thank you. During that operation overseas, if it weren't for your orders, a lot of us wouldn't have made it out alive. The team still talks about you. You're a legend among the ranks." A murmur rippled through the group, confusion mixing with disbelief. My aunt whispered something under her breath. My uncle frowned, but no one dared to make it a joke this time. My father's face drained of color. My mother, always quick to look me in the eye when she wanted to criticize, suddenly found the ground very interesting. My sister, who moments earlier had basked in mocking me, looked as though someone had pulled the earth out from under her feet. The pilot wasn't done. He stood taller, his voice carrying weight. "People talk about strength, about leadership, but I've served under many officers. Few had the kind of calm under fire you showed that night. You didn't just lead us, you saved us." I could feel my family's stares burning holes through me, their eyes wide, their world tilting upside down. For years they had told me I was nothing. For years my sister's name was the one spoken with pride, her so-called strength paraded around as proof of her worth. And yet here, standing before them, was undeniable proof that the daughter they mocked was someone far greater than they had ever imagined. My father tried to form words, his lips parting, but nothing came out. He looked shaken, his chest rising and falling like he had just run a mile, though he hadn't moved at all. My mother turned her face away, shame painting her features red. My sister, the golden one, looked frozen, her smile erased, her eyes darting between the pilot and me, searching for some explanation, some excuse that could make this moment vanish. But nothing could. The weight of truth filled the air like a storm pressing down on every person at that table. I didn't need to explain myself. I didn't need to remind them of my medals, my sleepless nights, or the blood I had seen spilled on missions they'd never know about. It was all laid bare by the words of a man who owed his life to me. And for once, my family couldn't twist the story. They couldn't laugh it off, couldn't diminish what had just been revealed. They were forced to see me, not as their failure, not as their shadow, but as Major Maria Barrett, the woman they had spent years underestimating. I rose from my chair without a sound. The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone else, but for me, it felt strangely light. I didn't slam the table. I didn't throw their words back at them. I didn't need to. Their silence, their lowered eyes, their shame. That was louder than anything I could have said. For once, the room that had always drowned me out was utterly still. I straightened my uniform and walked toward the door, each step slow and deliberate. I could feel their eyes following me, could feel the burning mix of shock, regret, and humiliation in the air. My sister sat frozen, her mouth half open as if she wanted to argue, but the words never came. My father, The man who once called me a disappointment in disguise leaned back in his chair, his knuckles white against the wood. My mother pressed her hand against her lips as though holding back tears or shame. I didn't turn around. I didn't need their faces burned into my memory. What mattered was the way I carried myself out of that house, not broken, not small, not the invisible daughter they once thought I was. I walked out as Major Maria Barrett. The night air hit me like a blessing, cool, open, free. I inhaled deeply, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel caged by their voices. Behind me, that house would never feel like home again. It would forever echo with their laughter turned to silence, their pride turned to shame. That was their burden now, not mine. As I stepped outside, the pilot still stood by the helicopter, waiting, his posture steady, his respect unshaken. He gave me another crisp salute. No words needed. The gesture said it all. Out here, in the world beyond their narrow walls, I was not a failure. I was someone who commanded respect, someone whose worth was carved in sacrifices they would never understand. Walking toward the helicopter, I felt a calm settle over me. Revenge hadn't come through shouting. It hadn't come through arguments or tears. It had come through truth revealed in the simplest, clearest way. Recognition, respect, dignity. That was enough. Inside that house, they would sit with their shame, replaying the moment again and again, realizing that all their years of cruelty had been built on lies they told themselves. They wanted me small, invisible, lesser. But the world, the real world, saw me for who I was. And nothing they said or thought could erase that. As the blades of the helicopter began to turn again, I looked up at the night sky and smiled. Just a little. Not out of smugness, not out of anger, but out of peace. My worth had never been theirs to grant or deny. I walked away carrying everything that mattered, my strength, my honor, my identity, and none of it was theirs to touch.